on 1 second. How about now? Can you guys hear me? Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Good grief. Not quite sure what's happening here. Can you? Aha! Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. I would have been a pretty boring live stream. unless you all know how to read lips. So hey, I apologize for that. Hey, thanks for those in the chat. Ian, thanks so much, because I had no idea. I thought I was doing well, went through my test here, and Ian and Candace, and Nicole, thanks for saving my butt. Because I didn't even realize. So I really appreciate you guys. Awesome, fantastic. And now you can hear, yes, and now it won't be so can you hear that? Or can you hear that? You hear that sound effect? All right, fantastic. Well, real quick, I'll sum up what you guys couldn't hear. I got a guest coming, which will be rolling in very, very shortly. But we're talking about inventory and builders creating more inventory by building townhomes. So there has been a shift, and in order to bring those prices down, those ridiculously high home prices, the unaffordability issue across the country, we need more homes. We've got the buyers aren't going anywhere. So in order to create more demand, it's like we use the analogy. If you guys, whoever was watching this was around in the 80s, remember the Cabbage Patch Kids or the Beanie Babies? Supply and demand. When there's fewer widgets and more people want to buy them, the higher they'll pay. So the whole idea is we're going to create more housing, more Beanie Babies, more widgets, more Cabbage Patch Kids, if you will, to bring the price down. And one way is through home building, and not only home building, but specifically townhomes. So this article came up last week, which I thought was very interesting, to kind of want to dig into that a little bit and show you guys what is going on here. So the article says that while home construction activity fell in 2023 for the second consecutive year, America's housing stock continues to grow faster than before the pandemic. Builders are racing to fill the 4.5 million home shortage with homes more easily affordable for today's first-time home buyers by leaning into higher density. Now, 4.5 million home shortage is debatable depending on who you talk to, but it's anywhere between 3 and 6 million homes is where we need to be to bring it back up to where it should be. So it goes on to say, construction began on 946,000 single-family homes in 2023, 7.1% fewer than it did 2022, and 16.5% fewer than the number of housing starts in 2021. Housing starts being how many homes, new construction homes. Of course, much of this decline can be chalked up to slowing demand due to housing affordability challenges. Roughly 1 million single-family homes were completed in 2023, the highest second annual total since before the global financial crisis, which is very interesting. But despite the cool down from a year before, the pace of home construction remains much stronger, which was much stronger than what was typical prior to the pandemic, both nationally and in many major markets. Roughly 11% more single-family homes were completed in 2023 than they were in 2019. And 6.2 more new single-family home construction projects began last year than it did in 2019. Now, this is where it gets interesting. It says maintaining a pace of the pre-pandemic trend meant that builders had to continue their pivot towards higher density, meaning condos and townhomes, building more townhomes and condos like they did in 2022, as opposed to detached single-family homes. Starts for detached single-family homes declined by 9%, by 8.9% in 2023. But starts for attached single families homes increased 3.2%, and new condo starts rose 8.1%. So this is something that has already, since, this is not new for 2024. This is something that the builders have been pivoting for over a year. It says the number of detached homes that were completed fell by 5.1%. Meanwhile, 9.6% more attached single family homes were completed when compared to the previous year. It says focusing on attached homes allowed builders to overcome some of the challenges related to land costs and build more units on smaller lots. As a result, the median lot area fell by 700 square feet in 2023 when compared to the previous year. The median home size remained steady at 2,200 square feet. Along with smaller lot sizes, the number of single family starts with a porch or patio also fell. I thought that was interesting. That there's a significance of single family homes with a porch or patio, apparently. um, this is very interesting, and I have another article I want to segue to that kind of gets into this a little bit more deeply. But we look at something like this, and yes, the builders are. I mean, everybody's, it's all about money for sure. The builders are not going to build more homes out of the goodness of their heart. They will make more money. If you have one parcel of land and you're building one single family home, you stand to make more money if you build 2 or 3 attached townhome, layout. So it's financially more feasible, but from a practicality standpoint, now you're talking about housing 2 or 3 families. And this, in where I'm at in Massachusetts, in Plymouth, I'm starting to see that more and more. We have a very large community in our neck of the woods called the Pine Hills. It won national awards, one of the largest mixed use communities in the country. And that is still, I mean, they've been building 10, 15 years plus. They've since they started. And the attached single family homes is something that I'm seeing, on my home front, more and more and more, because it just makes more sense. People can get their foot in the door, get more square footage for the money. They can save on energy costs because you're not having to heat the entire unit. We have an attached wall, and some of them are 2 and 2, 2 units to attach. Some of them are 3, where you have maybe a middle unit, but they all have, it's all very similar to a single family home in that you have a garage, and they sell it as a it's attached single family. So actually you are in charge of the exterior of the building yourself. You can do whatever you want within the confines of the HOA. But it's very similar. You have the outside around the perimeter and so forth that you're responsible for some minimal landscaping. You don't have the ability to do things like, put a pool in and fence in a yard and things of that, nature. But you can get a lot more for your money. And most of these places within the HOA have, systems set up or set up in such that you don't have to do the landscaping if you don't want to. They have all the common area that is designated with the homeowners association is maintained. And some will maintain more than others. So I'm going to switch over to this other article, which I thought was super interesting, by the Washington Post, that kind of gets into like the nuances of what that actually looks like. Because, from where I hit the wrong button. I am batting 1,000 tonight for sure. Here we go. Let's get the right screen here. This came out, oh gosh, yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. This article came out yesterday morning from the Washington Post. The new American dream should be a townhouse. I will tell you that was my husband at the time, that was our first place, was a townhome, because it was less expensive to get our foot in the door, and it was a step up from an apartment. It was a way to own our own, our property, build equity. And, we did do some renovations on the inside. And then we built up equity over 5-6 years, and then turned around, sold it, put that equity into a single family home. But the dynamics are changing, significantly. It's not for, not so much for just first-time home buyers. So this article goes on to say that owning a home has long been a core part of the American dream. Today, however, there simply aren't enough affordable options. And that ideal is increasingly out of reach. I kind of go into this with the video I did last week with a lot of homeowners going to renting because, to sell the property that they don't need anymore, they don't want all that square footage. And to get into another property, prices have gone up, the available options are minimal. So it actually, for a lot of folks, it makes more sense to rent. But in any event, it says there's a sensible way to address this shortfall, but it requires moving beyond the antiquated vision of a big house with a fenced yard in the suburbs. The new American dream should be a townhouse, a 2 or 3-story home that shares walls with a neighbor. Townhouses are the Goldilocks option between a single-family home in the suburbs and the high-rise condos in the city. So this is very interesting because seeing a lot of people pair townhomes and condos and lump them in the same category because the lenders will look at them and categorize them very similarly. But in this there's a difference between condominiums where it's like an apartment building, townhomes where it's very much like this. You own a section of the property, and then there's regular townhomes, but there's also attached single-family homes. Two different things. Single-family homes account for most of the houses owned in the United States. They typically have large yards and considered low density. Low density meaning you have more space around the house, right? So higher density living, such as apartment blocks, higher density living, such as apartment blocks, is 10% of the housing stock traditionally. However, these units are rented, not owned. Medium density housing in the United States, these are scarce. They are dubbed the missing middle because we need more homes of this size and spacing. And it's here that we find townhouses. So we've got your low density, you've got your missing middles right here. You've got, some stacked fourplexes, townhomes, and it's going to vary depending on where you are in the country on what is most popular. You see this type of layout, obviously, down in the Florida area. And even in, you get into most cities, Boston area and whatnot. Oh, I'm going to pause. Are you ready, my friend, to join me? I'm going to welcome to the stage. This is Angie Ufamata. How you doing there?
Hello.
I'm glad you're here.
What's going
You know what?
on?
Here's the thing. I was a little floundering. Oh, here we go. I am just a hot mess tonight. Thank God we've got Ian and Candace and Nicole, on the chat because I talked to myself for the first 5 minutes.
Thank you guys for
audio.
holding down the chat.
I had no audio. I'm like, they're like, we can't. Is it me or is she? We can't hear you.
Oh.
Well, now, it's just one of those things. You know what I mean?
Gotta love the chat though, man. They keep you straight. They let
They
you know
do.
what's going on.
They do, and I so appreciate it because that would have been a pretty boring live stream. It kind of would have been like.
They would have been like, what is she saying?
So I had to recap. The one thing I forgot to recap for you all on this live stream. So I am super pumped. We got a lot to cover here, Angie. So glad you're joining us from Austin, Texas.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
I'm gonna finish up talking about this townhome situation and builders, what they're doing. And then we're going to get into something I rolled out this weekend, which is a call-in number. And I know actually I didn't mention this to you guys because I was talking to myself. Over the weekend I rolled out a number that you can call, and it'll prompt you to leave your first name, where you're calling from, and your question, and then I will listen to that and potentially feature it on an upcoming live stream. So I had a caller call in over the weekend, put together some fun animation. Okay. Which was partially one of my daughters helped me. She's let's do that. That's fun. I said, oh, that's a good idea. So I'm excited to roll that out, and we'll answer that. And then I've got a couple questions from the video that I did last week that came in on the comments that I want to chat about. So we're talking about, Angie, we're talking about the fact that we've got the missing middle, or the townhomes, which is a section of the market that is actually underserved right now for new construction. And a lot of these builders are taking a parcel of land. Instead of doing a single family, you do one or two or three, duplex or a triplex, and create townhomes. Now you're helping the affordability, crisis, providing more homes. Builder makes more money.
Yeah.
But the demand is interesting. So I there was an article on Zillow, but I found this article on Washington that came up on the Washington Post yesterday that kind of goes into like how things are changing and the dynamics are changing across the country. So it kind of shows that this is that missing middle that I was referring to. So you've got 62% in 2023 single family, and you've got apartments, others like, multifamilies and so forth. And then 22% is the townhomes. And it says that the United States needs more homes. Now, I just read that Zillow article that says we need 4.5 million, but it depends on who you talk to. It says that 3 to 7 million, depending on the expert you ask, in many parts of the world, the obvious solution would be to construct high rises. However, financing and liability challenges for U.S. developers have meant almost no new condo construction since 2009. Well, we see like places like Florida having major issues, right?
Oh, yeah.
Foundations and so forth. So, with just their concrete issues. Instead, developers have found a sweet spot with townhouses. They are cheaper to build. They usually face less not in my backyard resistance, and buyers love them. Townhouses have all the trappings of a classic dream home, but they cost less to buy. I am going to play devil's advocate on this in a second, because I don't think it's as easy as that, but that's okay. They offer a low maintenance lifestyle and are more climate friendly. It's the American dream with a smaller yard. There it is.
Look at that.
That's like now they got everything working here. We got the anyways. So you know what? I'm going to take a pause here, all right, and just talk about this for a second. So it costs less to buy.
Mm-hmm.
It does. If the condo didn't have HOA fees.
Right.
It's not, I think that for the right person, I think it's good. I think you can get more bang for your buck, but you have to look at the big picture. You do save money on your homeowner's insurance.
You do.
Because, depending. Now, I don't know about you, what your situation looks like down in Texas, but up here, we're seeing a lot of single family attached housing where they're townhomes, but they're built and the title is transferred as the deed. It's a single family home. It's an attached single family home. And what that means to the homeowner is they're responsible for the whole shebang.
Mm-hmm.
So you insure it just like you would a single family home. The insurance is no less expensive than you would, insuring a single family home. But if you have an HOA, depending on where you live, depending on how many, amenities and whatnot, you could be saving $300-400 a month and getting this home. But now you've just nixed it by having the HOA fees.
It's interesting because here in Texas, there's a couple things that are happening in terms of development. Land is beyond expensive. So when prices went up here in the Austin area and got crazy, so did those land prices. And so what we started to see is not more, because folks always call me, especially investors, especially folks who are either downsizing or want low maintenance, call me about having duplexes. We don't do a lot of duplexes here. And we also don't do a lot of townhomes, interesting enough. We're just now starting in this area, Central Texas, starting to see more of it. But what we do see more of are, we call them detached condos. So it looks like a single family home, And it is technically a single family home, but the way that each county categorizes, whether it's a condo or whether it's single family, is by the lot size. So, for example, in Leander, Texas, and part of Williamson County, to be considered a detached condo would be a lot size of 40 feet wide or
Okay.
smaller. And
Huh.
that would be considered a condo. Anything larger than that would be considered a single family home. Again, to mention what you had just brought up, it still comes with an HOA if it's in a master plan development, meaning it has amenities that the residents can take advantage of. And ours is a little bit smaller than most places. So sometimes you can find an HOA, like my HOA is $40 a month. That's not a killer for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would say so.
right.
Right? It's
but,
like what I pay for garbage, curbside pickup, for crying out loud.
but
Jeez.
we don't have any amenities. So what it care this is so funny. So what it takes care of is the retaining or the retention pond that's in the back. That's it.
I was just gonna say it's probably something to relating to, picking up the slack of where the town leaves off
Yes.
and the community picks up. So if the town
Yes.
already if the town's gonna maintain the streets,
Yeah.
but maybe not the sidewalks
Mhm.
or, that type of thing, or in your case, you have a retention pond that the town's like, well, this is not considered, drainage, or maybe it was part of the master plan community that got approved by the town, and
Yeah.
the town said, "Hey," the zoning department said, "Yeah, we'll approve it if you, the
Yes.
builder, accept the responsibility because we're not gonna,
Covered.
absorb the cost of that into the town budget."
And then it ends up being in the homeowner's hands then.
Yep. CNITF, says it's sad that townhomes would replace single family as starter homes. I mean, yes
I
and
know.
no. Honestly, I think I don't know that that's necessarily a sad thing necessarily. It's not going to replace it entirely. I think it's going to be more of an option that's brought to the forefront because of the fact that it's just going to be a more another option.
Mhm.
We need more affordable options, period.
I
Period. We
think
need more affordable options. And I think, to be honest, like to get your foot in the door on a town home that is a true town home where you don't have to be responsible for the exterior maintenance, Angie. I
Mhm.
mean, for someone buying their first place, it's like, instead of like trial by fire, you go from renting to, oh my gosh, I have to worry about everything. Now you're just worrying about the inside. If,
Right.
the roof is an issue, depending on your condo docs, the windows could be covered. Depending on your condo docs, the doors could be covered, siding is covered, those types of things. It takes some of that responsibility off your
Yeah.
plate. And just in time, just so that you can get your feet under you, build some equity, and then you sell it
The
and
other
get
part of
into a
that,
single family.
it's a psychological thing too when you think about it. Okay, so this thought of the American dream, if you will, you think of white picket fence, right? You think of yard, you think of a dog, you think of 2.5 kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we have to change in this state that we're in. We have to change our mentalities about it and stretch our thinking as to what types of housing is now available to me at this time. So it's not a bad thing unless you do want that yard, but I think you really have to start thinking a little bit differently than the typical American dream, which is what Jen said. Getting in the door would be part of the dream, but more importantly, having it affordable where you're not going house poor is extremely
Yes.
important and a part of the dream.
110%, because it's not okay, like the whole thing of like, okay, you get the American dream, you own your home, and now you're like, great. I don't want to eat mac and cheese for the next 30
Or
years.
ramen.
That may
Okay,
be
cup of
okay.
noodle from
Yeah,
college.
right. Like that might be okay for like short term, but for long term, like
Yeah.
no. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like you don't want to be so financially strapped, because then if something does break, if something all of a sudden, that water heater that was fine, and then a year later, I I don't know about you, Angie, but water heaters, they have 7-year warranties for a reason. Like it's all
Yeah.
a conspiracy. Like they're gonna die on the day after.
Raise my hand for that. I need a new one right now, and my house is 5 years old, y'all.
My AC compressor, I have a mini split system, and I have 2 compressors. I have 5 heads in the house, and then I have 2 compressors on either side of the house. No joke. The compressor died literally 2 days after the warranty wore out.
That's the setup. That's a setup.
I'm like, come on.
Jim's turn.
Like, this is like, what do they call that? Built-in obsolescence.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
Hugh, thanks for joining us back. I know you've been here before. My first home was a townhouse. It was modern, but I still like space and privacy of a single family. I agree. I think that it really is getting into like what's important to you. What is
Right.
important? What is the most important thing? If your life is more outside the home, then you're not gonna, you know what I'm saying? Then that's where your focus is gonna be.
Mhm.
I personally, right now, I started at a townhouse. I'll probably end up there eventually. Right now, no, I'm in a single family, and this is where even though it's a pain to maintain and do all the yard work and the upkeep and everything, but eventually I'll, like right now, I don't want neighbors, right,
Mhm.
connected to me, and I like to have the space. So I get you 110%. Especially with you. I mean, you've got like what, about 16 kids there,
Yeah,
Angie?
literally, that's what it feels like, y'all. Oh my
Oh,
God.
no, it feels like you're feeding that many. I know you
They
like to eat.
just side note, when they're out of school, I'm a chef only. I don't do real estate. I'm
Oh,
just a chef.
you know what? I was gonna give you my number, and, we'll just do delivery. Be like, "Here's
Yeah.
my address,
Oh, I
Sandy.
like
Just
that. I like
add
that.
my name to your list." Affordability, Knift. I was gonna say Knift because I'm not quite sure how you Knift,
I think that's
Knift. Anyways, affordability, yes, helpful, but versus what you would get before on average for cost is less versus single family. But yes, but well,
I
in
think
terms
I
of
get it. In terms of home value,
maybe what you would get for, yeah, I mean,
depends.
yeah, how
I
would
would
you,
say, so if you're thinking about home value, the it really depends upon the location. Let's start there. Okay. Are you in the city or are you in the suburbs? Right. Because if you're in a townhome or in a condo that's close to the city, those home values are generally going to remain the same because they're going to have like mind or like properties around. Right. But if you're in the middle of the country, like in Texas, we have a lot of open space, and they're randomly putting up a townhome somewhere and nothing else is really close by, then that's going to be the same as a single family home, something that's far away from amenities, something that is generally difficult to get to major highways. Those are going to be slower to increase in value just because they don't have access. So it really depends. You can still get value if you're near that city or if you're in a well-developed subdivision. Um, yeah, and if you're far away, then that would be a little bit more tricky. But I still think you can get value out of it. The goal in my mind would be for a first-time homeowner or someone downsizing,
mm,
right? And so you just want to get your foot in that door first, gain some value. It doesn't have to be a ton of money to begin with, but then that'll help you transition to your next home. Maybe it
right,
is a single family home. Maybe it's a ranch. Maybe it's out of the country. Who knows?
right, right. Um, um, Kniff says, do townhouses increase in value similarly to single families? Basically, what you were, I think that they were just elaborating on on the previous question.
Okay, good.
My take, to be honest, is um, they absolutely do appreciate. They appreciate at different rates, and it depends on where you are in the country. It
Mhm.
depends on what the demand is for your area in the country. In some areas, condos and townhomes appreciate faster than single family homes. It
Absolutely.
really does depend. I mean, you try to buy a townhome on Beacon Street in Boston, forget about it.
Boom.
Forget about
Boom.
it.
Gone.
Those things are gone in a heartbeat. And supply and demand, like I said earlier, I use the analogy, Angie, of if anyone remembers back in the '80s, the Cabbage Patch Kids or the
Oh,
Beanie
yeah.
Babies. That's all we're at right now. We just need more Beanie Babies and Cabbage Patch Kids. You know what I mean? We got too many people that want to buy them and not enough to sell.
Yeah.
And if you live in an area that has that high demand, then that's, I mean, you look at a place like Florida, and there's a reason why condominiums are into high demand. You have, people that only go down there, for a certain amount of time.
Yep.
So they don't have to worry about yards,
Snowbird.
worry about maintenance. And if something goes wrong, God forbid, water heater breaks, you have neighbors that can keep an eye on this property. You have the whole HOA that can keep an eye on this property. A lot of them have mandatory now with the builders in Massachusetts anyways, there's mandatory codes for sprinkler systems, alarm systems for water, so that, and you have to sign up when you buy these, because if you are not there, guess what? You have a property that's attached to you. So you have to have some sort of a notification system, that can keep an eye on it. So I think that it really depends. But I think it's not so much, it's just a matter of how much they increase in unison. Croy West, thanks for coming back. Good to see you. The townhouse works best for me and most of my friends. I have no children and I don't need all the space or the maintenance.
I like that. I mean, honestly, that's the best decision in terms of keeping costs down and not having to feel overwhelmed with home. Listen, home maintenance is no joke. Like, you have to consider more factors when you're moving to a single family home, right? Than you would in a townhome and or a condo or detached condo, So I think it's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hugh says, I feel like taking care of my cursing family is a part-time job. Luckily, I enjoy gardening. I feel the same way.
Yeah,
and sometimes I get, there's something about just kind of zoning out, when I'm mowing the lawn and just kind of, or, you're doing trimming or whatever. Yeah, it's very like therapeutic. But then there's other times I'm just like, because right now Northeast, there's a major, and anyone that's watching this, you know what I'm talking about. We got a major acorn problem. Major. Every 3 to 5 years, the oak trees go through a cycle. And we're in that cycle this year. I've got millions. Matter of fact, I've got to clean my yard up before trick-or-treating because it's like a skating ring out there. When I mow the lawn, the lawnmowers literally slips over the lawn because there's so many acorns.
Wow.
And it's nuts. So I'm like loathing my yard right now. If anybody's in the southeastern Massachusetts area and wants to donate raking time, feel free. Hit me up. Sorry, like size. Okay. Yep, we got you. Oh, guess who's in the house?
What's up, Jackie?
Thanks for stopping in, Jackie. Jackie.
Hey.
I want to, before we get on to the question reel here, I want to just wrap this article up because I want to get on to questions, because I just love the community here. Always has so many good stuff, so much good stuff going on in the chat. There was some, we talk about affordability and just see what's some proof in the pudding, I guess. What's happening where? It says the United States doesn't just need more homes, it needs more affordable homes, like we were just talking about, due to high interest rates and the steep rise in prices there. This is the most expensive time to buy a home in 4 decades. The growing numbers of Americans fear they will never be able to buy. I've heard that a ton, Angie. A ton in the chat, in the comments. Wow. People are legit, afraid they're never going to own a home. Ever, because it's just because of the affordability crisis. So today, the typical household makes nearly $30,000 a year less than what is necessary to afford a median priced home of just over $400,000.
My brain right now.
Yeah.
Well,
check this out. It says no wonder housing has become a key issue in the presidential election, which we will not get into presidential election. No. Any nothing, zero. Please, no political comments in this chat. It says how much more people will need to make each year to buy a home.
I like this. Let's see it.
In New York, the median annual income. Okay, so median, for those watching, average and median are two different things. Average, if you have 10 people, would be taking those 10 people and averaging, adding up all the 10 incomes and then dividing by 10. Median puts more weight on whichever number is more existent. So if you have one person at $1 million and one person at 10,000, but 8 people at 50,000 or 100,000, it's going to the median price is going to put more weight on that median income because on that middle number.
Mhm.
It's not going to just average them all because that would skew the actual number. It gives
It
you a
would.
better, more accurate representation of what the number actually is. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense,
You
Andy?
did it. You did good.
Okay.
Takes out those outliers, that 10,000 and that million.
Yes, correct. It says in New York, I think you might be beeping there. I don't know if that's you or me.
Oh, no.
Just the notifications. Anyways, in New York, the median annual income is, this is kind of hard to believe, $114,000, $114,500 less than what's needed to buy an average home there. Los Angeles, LA, 143,000. 143. Let that sink in for a second. Anaheim, California, $182,400. That means that's how much of the deficit is and the income that's needed to live in those areas. I just thought that was fascinating. It says it's becoming more attractive because they cost less in big urban areas. The median sale price for a townhome is substantially cheaper, $382,000, so on and so forth. It says there's deep anxiety about money among middle-aged and younger Americans. They lived through the Great Recession of 07 to 09 that caused millions of Americans to lose their homes. The pandemic recession that caused 23 million to lose their jobs almost overnight. And the worst inflation spike in decades. Oh, all this great news here tonight.
It's fantastic, right?
Oh, fantastic. I'm just going to drown myself in all that Halloween candy.
Oh my God. There's a little bit of trauma there happening, no?
Nothing a little Reese's won't fix. All of this is causing people to rethink what they want and need. That's super important.
It's really
what they want and need.
And I would reverse that. What do you need? And then let's talk about your wants.
Correct. You need shelter. You need affordability. You need space.
You do.
You don't need all the other amenities, the gym and all the things like, the game room and all that kind of, like, unless you're doing gaming for a living.
Yeah. You don't need pickleball courts.
No.
Unless you're a professional pickleball player.
That's the thing is you need to, weigh out these things based on what your affordability is. If you can afford it, then fantastic. It says this is one reason the size of a newly built home has been shrinking over a decade, and people are moving south and west where housing is cheaper. Townhouses are part of this value shift. It says last year was a boom for townhouses. 1 in 5 new homes under construction was a townhouse. 1 in 5.
A lot.
I think that's tremendous. It's a lot more than I thought.
Think about the desire though. Like, so to the question about, whether or not it's going to have a similar value. Well, with that kind of mentality, think of where we're headed. People may not even want, a single family home anymore. May be less desirable because of maintenance. They may save money, buying a townhome. I think there might be a shift in terms of, desire, in terms of what people want as a goal in home ownership. So that'll be really interesting to watch over the next few years or so as to where we're headed with that.
I personally would like to see some townhomes that are not geared towards buyers that are looking for amenities. In other words, save some money on the HOA and build a community of townhomes that maybe have like you have an HOA $40 or whatnot, and it's bare minimum. Like whatever the bare minimum needs to be. There's no clubhouse, there's no pickleball courts, there's no pool, there's not all this foo-foo-y, whatever. You just want the basics. Bring that price down. Make it more affordable. Kniff says what's the best way to fix the affordability issue? This is exactly what this is live stream is about. This it's not so much there's not one best way. No. There's multiple ways to skin a cat, but one of the ways is creating more housing to stifle demand, to satisfy demand. You're not going to decrease demand by raising interest rates. This is why a lot of the crash bros drive me absolutely bonkers. Because a crash, the market is at a point now where people are buying, they're holding off buying, but they're not gonna not buy.
Right.
Some will go rent and give up, but a lot of them will just keep putting it on the back burner, put it on the back burner, put it on the
Yeah.
back burner. And if we don't get more inventory, if we don't create more inventory, here's the issue, Kniff, is that we've got a lot of new buyers coming in, millennials,
Mhm.
a lot of new buyers coming in that aren't selling a property. They need to buy. We've got a lot on the other end, folks that would, typically in previous generations retire and sell their home and not buy another. Those folks are A, staying in their home. B, not only are they staying, they may sell, but they're buying down, they're downsizing. So
Mhm.
they're buying the very thing that our typical first-time home buyers would buy. So
Right.
we've got too many people making babies in the country.
It's true.
We've got it's all population, it's numbers. We've got a growing population in this country, and we've got people that are of home buying age, and we don't have enough existing housing to satisfy that demand, and it's not going to go away.
There's
You
sev
know,
Yeah, there's several different ways. This is a loaded question. I love it because you're right. It's not just one solution to the problem. It's multiple factors. Well, I won't go into all the details, but part of it is government. Okay, what they're doing. We don't have control, neither do the developers have control over what they're doing.
yep,
Secondly, in terms of interest rates, laws, all of that stuff, right? To
yep,
alleviate some of these things. Secondly, you have investors that have flooded the market. That's a whole nother issue, right? So getting them out where there's something that says that they can't buy up all of these, they're buying up whole communities, as y'all know.
yep.
That's an issue. Another, well, a way that I think that could be a solution to the problem is we get even smaller. And here's why. At first, I didn't know if I was on board with this, but I've got clients getting ready to retire, and they reached out and they said they're in this beautiful house. Okay, it's about 1,700 square feet, but they want to go smaller, into retirement.
Mhm.
They said, "Hey, we are thinking about tiny house living." Okay. I know. Y'all are gonna say, yeah, it's too small. But think about that. Think about your cost.
Mhm.
So that was very important to them when I had that conversation of where they wanted to be on a fixed income. And I think that mentality is quite interesting because even if you're a Gen X and you're millennials, Gen X is coming in, right? They're
Yep.
wanting to buy too, but it's too much going on. And I think there's a
Yes.
lot of fear there. But if we could have that mentality of, okay, if I was on a fixed income, right? If I made no more than what I'm making right now, what would be affordable to me personally? So I think more tiny homes need to pop up. I think that we have, oh,
I
this is my
concur.
opinion, we've overvalued 3D homes when it's supposed to be a cheap
Mm.
way of being able to get into a home, by the way.
Unfortunately, yes.
I think that manufactured homes, I know y'all are going to say something, but the truth be told, manufactured homes are an option as well if we can make them into the right communities. And here in Austin, we've actually built these already. And
Yep.
people are living in those neighborhoods already, in villages, as they call them. So you still get the community. You still get, being able to be one with your neighbor and know your neighbor. And it feels like a neighborhood because it is. So I think that's one of the few things that we can do is look outside of single family, looking into townhomes and alternative homes for people.
110%. 110%. And
Just my
not
mind.
only like looking at the homes, but also getting the communities on board to approve
I know.
these
Government.
projects and master plans for those tiny homes and it's and these small, these modular homes. They're available, but where are you going to put it?
I know.
Where are you going to put it?
And land is
So
expensive.
take that. That's the cog in the wheel. That's the blockage. How about the builder takes care of that?
I know.
Take some of that land instead of doing what they're doing and create these tiny home communities, and then first time homebuyers will go in. They don't have to worry about finding the land. Don't
No.
worry about it. It's already done. It's already done. Hey, I want to get to this question because I don't want the time to I want to be respectful to those that have tuned in, and I don't want the time to get away from us because I want to roll out the question. And I may have been muted when I made this announcement about the live stream. So the call-in live stream. So I've got the number you see on the screen, the 508-591-3228. You can call that number and leave your first name, where you're calling from, and your question. And then I will potentially feature that on an upcoming live stream. So I put together this cool graphic, and I will tell you that my youngest daughter helped me design it.
Gotta love it.
So I'm gonna hit play on this thing, and then we'll discuss.
Hi, Jen. My name is Nicole, and I am calling from Edina, Minnesota. And I was wondering, I've heard on the radio about home title lock, and I was wondering if, like, the fraud with your home title, if that is a real, I'm sure it's a real thing, but is it a big thing I should be worried about? So that's my question. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Very cool.
All right. So thanks so much, Nicole, for calling that in. You are the first. Hey, Nicole. Hey, all right. Nicole Olsen, she is on the call. Hey, thanks so much for doing that. Yeah, the first, you are the inaugural, the first one on the ship. So I personally had not heard of home title lock. To be honest, I had not heard of that, and didn't even I wasn't familiar with it. I actually emailed my attorney to find out what it was, and actually talked to Jackie Baker's on the call on the chat. I know she is very familiar with that. But I mean, home title lock is, essentially where, protects you against someone taking over the deed of your house. Now, in Massachusetts, in a lot of states, you can get owner's title insurance. And it's my understanding that owner's title insurance, you have mortgage companies will require mortgage title insurance. And basically what that does is protect the mortgage company against any fraudulent activity, or someone posting, that is, making a claim against the deed. So in other words, you buy the property, you've owned it 10 years, and then all of a sudden someone from 50 years ago says, that's my great, 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 great uncle's property, and that wasn't sold correctly, and I really am the owner. Well, the attorney fees that are associated with getting that fixed are covered by title insurance. If you don't have the mortgage title insurance, doesn't do anything for you. It only protects the bank. Owner's title insurance would do that. So a lot of folks in Massachusetts, anyways, we buy at the closing. It's a one-time fee. You buy this owner's title insurance, and it protects you against that for the most part. This home title lock is kind of my attorney explained it as like a life lock for your home. So it's credit monitoring and so forth, because I was talking to the attorney, and he said that because when you buy a property and you have a deed, and that deed is in your name, back in the day, you had to have a piece of paper to show that you own the house. Well, the paper is irrelevant now, because everything gets scanned electronically. It's in the system electronically. And now the paper could disappear. You still own the house. It's just recorded electronically. Well, because it's recorded electronically, and these deeds are homes are trading hands electronically, it just opens everything up wide open to the no-gooders. Opens you up to exposure. What's your take? Do you guys deal with home title lock? You familiar with that down in Texas?
No, I'm not. Which is a very interesting concept, honestly. What we do deal with is, of course, a lot of fraud. Mainly because we have a lot of open space. And that means if you own land that's unimproved, right, that's just been sitting there, you buy a little piece of property that's, 14 acres or whatever have you, there's nobody living on the property. And this actually just recently happened to me, to be honest. I'll tell you about a little.
Really?
Yeah. This is an important question for people to know. So I can understand why you're thinking about it. Is that you essentially have folks that are coming out, and my title company, like Jen said, had already given us a warning that this kind of thing was going on, that somebody had gotten all the way to closing, and the escrow officer, because we have escrow officers here in Texas with title companies, but the escrow officer said that she felt something that was a little bit fishy, and come to find out, somebody was trying to sell property that they didn't own. Going through the title process, because everything was so meticulous. So you have to be really careful. with the signature lines and phone number, all of that stuff, wiring instructions. So anyway, my story was a couple weeks back. I had somebody reach out that said, "Hey, I'd love for you to do an evaluation on my property just to kind of see where we are market wise, right? Market value." I ran that and I said, "Hey, can we connect and meet out at the property so I can take a look?" And I do this with every client. And that person declined and said, "Hey, I will choose you as my agent once you run the numbers." And I thought it was kind of funny, kind of fishy. So I always have my little spidey senses going on. And as soon as I did that, I did my normal process, which I would with any beautiful seller, right? And I said, "Hey, since we haven't met, I need you to send me a copy of your ID." You have to start asking that now, y'all. Send me a copy of your ID so that I can align it to the deed, so I can align it to all the other things. Sure enough, as soon as I asked that question, crickets. I had not heard from that person again. So having a title lock, it would make sense to me to ensure that your title is secure. But if you went through a title company, for sure, you should have coverage. Okay. You've already paid for it, or maybe the seller, when you purchased your house, the seller paid for it. It's going to cover encroachments. It's going to cover, whether or not your, neighbor decided they were going to put their fence on you, but also it's going to cover anything like this. Like Jen said, the attorney fees, if something goes awry and somebody's trying to sell your property and saying that it's your home. So I think we're probably going to see more of that. Think about it.
Yeah, I think, Nicole, thank you so much for calling that in. That's actually an awesome question. And I would say, to answer your question or give you guidance on that, depending on where you are, Lisa, you're in Minnesota. I don't know what the Minnesota,
Right.
how properties are transacted, whether you use attorneys or title companies to make that transaction. But what I would do is check in your paperwork to see if you have owner's title policy. And then I would look at what that owner's title policy covers to see if a home title lock gives you any additional protection.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
If you leave your paperwork, call them. Call them. Feel free to call them. I bought a house 3 years ago. I bought a house 10 years ago. They keep that stuff. They have to keep that stuff on record.
They do. They absolutely do. It is easier. I always recommend that if you do buy an owner's title policy, when you buy the house, take that title policy document, put it someplace safe. Because here's the thing, you fast forward, right? And this has happened. I've seen this firsthand. You fast forward 10 years, 15 years, you go to sell the house. There's an issue with the title. Wait, no problem. I don't have to pay all those exorbitant attorney's fees. I have owner's title policy. Well, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, we need to see who wrote the title policy, who the title company was, and what the coverage and all the things. We need a copy of the buyer's policy. Okay, great. Oh, I don't know where it is. Well, who's the attorney? Well, I think it's this person. So you can kind of come to find out, and this happened, the attorney retired. The attorney's gone. So we figured it out, but it was a giant pain to try to go through the maze.
Yeah.
And when you are in the middle of selling your home and maybe buying another, and you've got a million things on your brain, and you're trying to juggle all the things, and you're trying to juggle this and the finances and the moving companies and the packing, and then you throw maybe kids in the mix, and the last thing you want to do is spend hours researching this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Last thing you want to do. And so having that quick boom, here you go, or scan a copy electronically, put it someplace where you're going to find it, then that's a good way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Clark says that he says, I tell all the homeowners I know to register with the county to get any alerts if someone electronically messes with any documents. That's a pretty cool service.
I like that.
That's available.
Clark, where are you?
He's in Atlanta area, Georgia.
Okay.
So I wonder if that's something that is like available. I have not heard that in Massachusetts. I wonder if it's available in Massachusetts. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's great advice, especially if you don't have a mortgage, because scammers scammers have been targeting people that don't have a mortgage on their house. Yes, and yes, because when you go to sell a house, guess what? If there's an outstanding mortgage, now that seller has to deal with the mortgage company to get a discharge, because that discharge will prevent that property from being sold. So if there's no mortgage, there's no discharge,
There's only a deed.
roadblock. There's no roadblock.
And they can create a deed quickly, just so y'all know. So like I said, don't just leave. If you own property, I don't care what it is, what type of property, just check in on it.
You know what?
No?
Just you know what? Just buy a nice RV and just be done. Just travel.
I
Don't
like a
stop.
little fifth wheel. We can do a little fifth wheel.
You know what I'm saying? Then you don't have to be like, you know what? Just put a lock on the RV and get out of here. You're not stealing this thing from me. That can be stolen too. Let's see. Oh, Nicole, earlier, I just want to jump back. Joe Pareca's on the chat. Nicole says, going back to the tiny homes, says, I don't have a home yet going to be a first-time home buyer. So this is a great question. You're a very smart first-time home buyer for asking about home title lock, and you haven't even purchased the house yet. But wanted to have all my ducks in a row before start. That's why I watch all your videos. Don't like to go in anything blind. Amen. I legitimately
love it.
There we go.
You get one of those.
110%. I applaud you for putting that effort in, because you know what? Don't go into home ownership. Half what, fill in the blank. Coors Light 2025. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back. I know you're here. You've been here before. They said, I called my mortgage company, asked them if I should be concerned about someone committing home title fraud on my house. They said there is no need to be concerned.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they monitor. That whoever. Okay, so the person that answered the phone is probably not representing the lender, because the mortgage company would never say that.
No.
You just happen to talk to somebody who doesn't know what the heck they're talking about.
That's unfortunate.
Newsflash.
Yeah. And here's why. You want to check everything. I mean, we're living in a time where fraud is rampant, and it's just amping up, where security breaches are happening everywhere. You want to not only monitor your home, you want to monitor all your assets. You want to monitor your bank account. You want to keep an eye on all of that and not leave it up to these third parties, i.e., the mortgage brokerage, all that. You've got, and not only that, you've got to push. So if you're feeling and have an instinct, I always tell people, go on your instinct, because those people aren't going to buy you a new house if it just so happens to get snatched up and something goes awry. So I like the idea that you've already called in. That's excellent. But don't take that for an answer. Find out even more information on your own if they're not unwilling to give it to you, or if they just don't have the education about it. You got to monitor. Did we lose Jen? We can't hear you, Jen. We lost her. Let's see if we can get her back in. Can you hear me? Okay. I know. Sorry. Technical difficulties. You can watch me dance until Jen figures it out.
Oh, no.
There we go.
Okay, guys. You guys all know I don't take myself too seriously. I muted the microphone to cough, and then didn't unmute it. There's no such thing as perfection.
No, you just got to be you.
I am a human through and through. Hey, this is how it rolls.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, there's a ghost in the machine. There's a ghost on the machine. MH08, I've been an owner for 20 years and learned a ton from all the channels I sub to. Well, thank you so much for being here. That's really appreciate it. 110%. Let's see here. Yes. Thank you for that too. We can hear Angie. That's all that matters. Honestly.
Okay, good.
That's all matters. That's all matters. Oh, Jackie. Hey, I want to jump into some questions before I do something ridiculous again. So it's a live show. It's a live show, guys. So I did dropped a video last week about renting. A lot that there's this trend of people that, and because of the affordability crisis and because a shift in what is important, like we were talking about earlier, Angie, about what the wants and needs are, and a lot of folks are, there is, and mind you, I have always been very pro ownership. I'm all, that's that I default to that. I see the value of that, but there is an argument for renting, depending on what your situation is. So I went through all, kind of dissected that, and this comment came in from Derek Adams, and I thought it was an interesting thing to just kind of chat about. It says he says this information is geared more toward a cash buyer. A home being sold as is to a buyer who is obtaining a traditional mortgage is going to be difficult to close. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA do a couple of programs which can help the right buyer with these situations, but at the end of the day, any major problems on a home must be corrected before closing. If the seller isn't providing any relief for major repairs, the buyer will have to front the cash for the repairs before closing. Any property sold as is will be heavily scrutinized by a lender, and in most cases, the loan will be denied. Okay, thank you very much for that comment, but I have to disagree. I have to very much disagree on, I think that you're on the right path, but let me tell you why. So selling a home, and as I went through the video, selling a home can mean, as is, can be a lot of different things. It can be something as big as a failed septic system or a hole in the roof or something of that nature. It could be something as little as some rotted trim.
Yeah.
Or carpet that's ripped, or, trim in the house because you had a dog that's just chewed to heck. It can be a lot of things. Every mortgage company is going to look at that differently.
They will.
The fact to give it a blanket statement of, obtaining a traditional mortgage is going to be difficult to close is not necessarily true. It depends on the buyer. It depends on the lender. It depends on the program. It depends on the repair that's needed, if at all, anything major. There are a lot of moving parts there that prevents me from agreeing from the statement that it's going to be, difficult to close. Yes, there are programs, but there's also holdbacks. So in Massachusetts, we have a requirement where a property has to pass a septic system inspection before it can transfer hands to another buyer, to another homeowner. It's a state law. And there's nuances with that, in terms of, a certain time frame they have to do it. It has to pass within 2 years of the property transferring. The lender wants to see it done and passed before it closes. So if you have a septic system that fails, it depends on the lender. It depends on the seller situation. The seller may be, like, I don't want to deal with it. I'm just going to sell it to a buyer. I want the buyer to take on that responsibility. Depending on the loan product, depending on the lender itself, what I've seen is a holdback by the attorneys. So what that means is the buyer says, I'm going to, the seller is going to do a holdback of $25,000 until the septic is done, which is entirely, a possibility. There are also different types of mortgage programs that you can actually finance the cost of that into the program, to the actual loan. But I don't know that I'd lump that all together. And I certainly wouldn't say that, a property, yes, when an appraiser sees the words as is, yeah, it's going to be looked at a little bit more closely. But guess what? Appraisers inspect in person and they take pictures for the lender. And if the property needs cosmetic work only, they're not going to get a loan that's denied.
Right.
So I don't think that I look at this and I don't agree that it's as harsh as that. I think selling a house as is has its limitations. It has its drawbacks, but sometimes it does make sense. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to limit your buyer every single time, because it depends on the home situation.
The other part, Derek, is that the word "as is," of course, we know that's a legal term. That actually means something completely different in different states. So, for example, in Texas, in our contracts, the word "as is" already in it, but there's another paragraph right underneath that does not preclude you from doing a third-party home inspection. So it's like a contingency, right? It's as is for now until you're able to do your home inspections, which during that time you can negotiate. And you can run some of these things by your lender. Hey, listen, this is shoddy. Do you think this is going to cause a problem? Is this going to be something we need to negotiate? We also have what is called an option period and an option period fee here in the state of Texas. And what that means is that we pay, the buyers pay consideration to the seller to take their house off the market so that the buyers can do their due diligence, meaning septic inspection, pool inspection, third-party home inspection, any inspections that you need for a negotiated amount of days. And during that time frame, you information gather about the property you're about to purchase. If you decide you don't want that property or it's too much work, or the lender says, hey, I think this is going to be a real issue, right? And the seller may not comply, you can cancel and terminate for any reason during that time. So I think we got to also think about where are you located? Because every state is different. And then what is the meaning of the as is clause within those contracts?
Absolutely. Joe's Pareca says in California that that contractual default is that all sales are as is. But the question that is presented, what actually is as is? So that's I mean, that's the other thing too, is that as is can mean a lot of things. As is just for septic, as is for the entire house, as is for what?
All the contracts are different. All of
Every contract is different. And some states require seller disclosure. So you can't just wash your hands and say, you know what, I'm just going to sell the way it is and put as is in the contract, in the listing, which means I'm not on the hook for anything.
Right.
And that is not the case. Buyers can still sue you.
Yes,
Buyers can still come after you. Buyers can still ask for repairs. But in some states, seller's disclosures, the written seller disclosures are required with a listing.
Yep. That's
you can't get around that. So you've got to be upfront about that. Let's see. Clark says, I agree with you. Everything is looked at differently in an as-is transaction. The one thing that can't be skipped down here is a termite clearance letter. You guys have that down in Texas?
We do.
Yeah, I would imagine you would. When using FHA, VA, we have that here in Massachusetts too. Being Georgia is the number 2 state when it comes to termites. Really?
That's actually fascinating. Thanks, Clark.
You got a lot of bugs, huh? Well, that's good to know. A lot of steak on a plate. Should be building those houses out of concrete. Yeah. Take away dinner. I've been up here. They I remember a home inspector back in the day. When I remember a long time ago, they said there's 3 types of homes. There's ones that have termites, those that had them and had it treated, and those that don't have it yet.
we still need it. So for instance, for VA loans, we still need it here in Texas, but we're pretty dry in most of the places. But yeah, there's still requirements for it.
I want to go back there's a couple comments that I just thought this was funny. Of course, like 2025, when I went mute, because I thought Jen switched to members only.
I like that.
You never know. Ronna Lee, thanks for joining. I believe you might be new on the stream. Glad you're here. How difficult or easy is it to transfer your home title into a trust fund? I'm thinking of creating one. It depends. I'm going to say this a lot, but it depends on where you are. I know that typically it's not hard. I did it myself, and it's you need to. The best way to do it is to align yourself with a real estate attorney that handles family trusts, that can set that up for you to make sure that that document is created properly, and then they can record that trust at the registry. So the property is registered as a trust. Now the property is in the trust and it becomes a little bit more protected. But there's a lot of nuances that need to be determined before you can just do that. You've got to determine who the trustees are, who beneficiaries are, and so forth, have that all lined up. But I am a big fan of putting your house in a trust. Opposed to it just is a protection of liability. There's a protection you could use it as a layer of anonymity. You could set up as 1, 2, 3 trust, and the trustees are not listed publicly. The only people that know who the trustees are the people that are in the trust or the people that created the trust.
It's a long-term play for sure.
Yeah, so it becomes you can protect yourself if you don't want people to know who owns that property. That's another way a lot of people do that. To give themselves a veil of privacy. It's not.
And then for family planning. I mean, when you're thinking, I know I don't want to go morbid on y'all, but for family planning, it ends up being better.
The real estate market is fueled by babies, death, and taxes. Or whatever.
So I think it's a good idea, and you don't have to just put your primary. Put all your properties in there.
Yep. Yeah, my attorney told me to put your checking accounts in there,
all of it,
savings accounts, all the things. Let's see here. Michelle Valentin. Thanks for being here. I'm closing next week. Any tips on what to look at the final walkthrough in closing? Okay. Let's go. All right. So here's the thing: as a final walkthrough, I always advise where you're doing like a mini home inspection.
You are
a mini home inspection. So what does that mean? Number one, you're going to want to make sure that everything that the seller promised you is done. So in other words, if they said they're going to leave the dresser, it's not good enough that they're like, oh, we moved it by accident. We'll bring it back next week. I promise. No. Write it down, have an agreement, have the attorney hold an amount of money that will ensure that the seller will bring it back if that's the case. You want to make sure that there's no burn marks on the floor and holes in the walls. You want to make sure the property is in the exact same condition that you agreed to buy it as. But then you want to go through and flush the toilets, turn the water on, right? You want to make sure the heat turns on. If you're not in the Northeast, this becomes a little tricky. If you're in the Northeast, you can't really turn the AC on when it goes below a certain temperature. So that gets a little tricky, especially if you have a pool in cold climates. You have to have it, and that's why I think when you're buying a pool during the colder climates, it's best to either have a pool inspected or have the seller provide a pool inspection to have an outside, because you're not going to be able to actually see that pool uncovered. You're not going to have any verification. But you got to go through, and I mean, a final walkthrough should be about, what would you say, about a half an hour?
Yeah, it shouldn't take you that long, unless, okay, here's the one thing that I was going to mention with that, Jen, is that if you've had work done or repairs on your major systems, I call it the big 5. So your roof, your HVAC, your water heater, your appliances, or anything dealing with plumbing. Oh yeah, and electrical. So if you've had that done, feel free to call your actual inspector to come back. It's less money for sure to check those to make sure they're okay, or to get your guys out there to make sure it's running properly if you've had major issues. Other than that, everything else Jen said was great. The one tip I will give you, though, when you are negotiating, I don't know if you can do this in the States, but we do this in Texas. If you want the refrigerator, which don't come with the houses here in Tejas, okay, and neither do the washer and dryers.
What did you just say? Tejas?
Tejas.
That's what they say down there. It's like, well, you guys can't say Texas. Like that's like an inside members only thing. Texas. Oh, you're not part of my club. Right. I'm going to remember that when I go down there. I'll be like, hey, I'm in Texas. Oh, you're not around from here. I go like, hey, I'm in Tejas. I'll be like, howdy. How you do it? All right. McConaughey and I are like,
you're like, yes. So since those things don't come if you negotiate them, take a photo, but also take a picture of the actual, we call thing inside the refrigerator. The model, you want that. And you want that to be written down somewhere, because people will switcheroo on you. You think you're You end up with something from the 90s that's all white. That doesn't match the kitchen at all. So that's just a little tip.
That's really good advice. I never thought about doing that.
Oh yeah, I always do it.
Oh, it's
Always.
interesting. I would also check the things that you don't think to check, like behind the shed, if you have one.
Sprinkler systems, check
In
it.
the shed. Yeah. I mean, you wanna, I had a situation, last year where I was representing the seller. The seller had, purchased the property, hadn't lived in it that long, turned around, sold it, got married. I don't need this property anymore, sold it. Final walkthrough, and there was on the perimeter of the property, there's a lot of trash that was actually technically on the property. I didn't pick up on it when I was there the week before. And the buyer came through and was like, that's technically on our property.
Hmm.
I said, yes, it is. And so we had to negotiate, and we negotiated a dumpster and the compensation from the seller to the buyer to compensate. Now the seller's perspective was like, well, I inherited it that way. It doesn't matter.
No.
It wasn't, it was there. The buyer said free and clear. The buyer caught it because they saw the perimeter. They went behind the shed. They saw those things. And we were, we solved the problem super easy,
Yeah.
just, it was a small amount of money, but the buyer would have been stuck with it.
Mhm.
Just like my seller, who I didn't represent her when she bought it, but when she purchased the property, they didn't catch it in the walkthrough. And so they were stuck with it after they bought it. So
Yeah.
I think that would be it. And then as far as the closing is concerned, I mean, I think that, having a good line of communication with your lender, if you're doing, getting a mortgage, making sure all those, ducks are in a row and whatnot, and whatever your state requires for time frame of actually taking possession, and making sure you have clear and, concise, predetermined, instructions on how you're going to do that. So great question.
Love it.
Great question. I have one other question here that came up that I just want to touch on. It has to do with appraisals versus valuation. So, along the lines of selling a house as is, Leona Owen 9234. You're very welcome, Michelle. She says, if you don't have any money to fix anything, could you get an appraisal or have a home inspection to get an idea of what you could price your home could price your house, could price your home as. So I wanted to bring this question up, Angie, because a lot of folks don't know the difference between an appraisal and evaluation from a real estate agent, right?
Mhm.
And how all that process works. So if you are, considering, putting the house on the market, you're not quite sure if you can even put the house on the market, whether whether the amount that you can sell it for will even, be the number that you need to actually sell. I would call a minimum of 3 agents. 3. I always say that. 3, 3, 3.
Sure.
You gotta call 3 agents to get 3 valuations. Here's the thing. The valuations and the process of getting a valuation, where they will be looking at area comparable properties, then they will make adjustments for whatever work that the property needs. If it's all cosmetic and all the area comps are completely renovated, then they'll make an adjustment for that and say, okay, in this market, this is what a buyer is willing to pay. And that's where one of the differences is between a valuation and appraisal. An appraiser, number one, you're going to pay for it.
Yep.
Appraisals are not free. Valuations are. It doesn't cost you anything to have the realtors come in. It cost you not a nickel. And if they're going to charge you, don't hang up the phone.
Yep.
Say, see you later, bye. Appraisals cost money, but the appraisal is, you have an appraisal done on your house. That is in that moment in time.
Yes.
This is what the house is worth, versus a valuation where you might be sitting with an agent and say, okay, the agent's going to look at what the market is doing, what the market could be doing. If you are looking at having this done in, say, February, well, that's right on the cusp of the spring market. the spring market, typically values go up depending on where you live in the country. It may look like you are going to have an incline. You're going to have an increase in your home values, which means, I could potentially say to you, okay, here, if you want a better number, maybe wait until April.
Yep.
To sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to just sell and cash out, if you're going to sell and buy, it doesn't make a difference. But if you're going to sell and cash out, you might be able to strategize that way. An appraiser's not going to necessarily, they're not going to give you that number. And I find also the appraisers, I don't know what your experience is, Angie, I find appraisals are more conservative when you're just asking for a write-out appraisal versus, hey, this is the number we're trying to reach. And they'll work a little harder to justify that number on a purchase contract versus just give me a number. It doesn't it doesn't correlate.
It doesn't account for demand in a certain location either, right? Like you said, the market trends, those guys aren't looking for the same things we're looking for when we're doing that. And the desire for a home is not going to match what the appraiser is putting in there. He or she is not looking for that type of information.
Correct.
And with regards to the question about if you wanted to put your house on the market, would it be a good idea to look at the home inspection first to kind of get to wrap your mind around what would be the price of having to fix it up and then listing at a price, reduced? That could be a good idea. I mean, I have had clients want to do a pre-listing inspection because they are very detailed. These are for the detailed individuals. They don't want to be surprised when they put their house on the market and somebody comes to do a home inspection that they have a leaky roof. Like, they want to know upfront what those are going to be. And those are for those folks who want to get pricing right as to what they're going to have to negotiate potentially in the future. So that's one idea that is a possibility. You could take that number, and we have companies here in Austin. The inspection companies give you it's really fabulous, y'all. Find you an inspection company like this. They give you a list of items, and then they give you a little price as to what an estimate would be if you had to replace your water heater, if you had to do paint, so they give you this estimated amount, and you can kind of generally get a good idea based on the inspection report of how much it's going to cost you if the buyer is asking for these things up front. Pretty cool.
In Texas, do home inspectors need to be licensed? Are they required to be licensed? So here's an interesting fact. In Massachusetts, they are not allowed to do that.
Oh.
They could lose their license if they do that.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like it's not that they're giving it. It's like a general range of how much it would cost to fix your water heater, how much it would fix your roof.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not exact.
Okay. So so in other words, like if I had a contractor come through and there was some wood rot, they couldn't say, oh, for this particular job.
No.
More than $200.
No.
They can't do that. But the inspector that I typically give as an option to a buyer, say I've had good luck with clients have had good luck with this inspector. They're from Pillar to Post, which is a pretty big company, and they do like a trifold, probably same type of thing. It's like the area Northeast averages for how much.
Correct.
So like in Texas, a water heater is going to be like $500, and in Massachusetts, it's going to be like $5,000. So,
oh my God,
I'm kidding.
But it is.
It's ridiculous how expensive it is.
I like that because it gives buyers it's all on one. Instead of going to Google for each item, you get one sheet of, it could range from this price to this price. It could cost you this to this,
Super awesome. It's awesome sauce. Well, this is good stuff. Angie, thanks so much for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for being patient, y'all.
I appreciate it. Thanks for being patient with me, everybody, because today it's been interesting. I don't think I've ever had a situation where I've been quiet muted. When have you ever known me to be quiet, Angie? Come on now.
It's a Tuesday, Monday for you. It's fine.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Hey, if anybody wants to get some information about TIAS, see what I did there?
Come on.
Yeah. Specifically Austin area. Angie is your gal. Angie,
I love it. Thank you.
One of the most hardworking agents in the biz.
Oh, you're so
for
sweet.
Sure. And if you're looking for an agent outside of Austin area,
boom,
click the link in the description below. I'll get you in touch. As I always say on this channel, 80% of the agents out in the market in the industry are not worth what they're charging. They're not going to give you full value for what they're charging. But 20% are. And over the last 28 years, I have I put together a network of about 200 agents across the country. And my standards are pretty darn high. I've eliminated a few agents from my network, Angie, over the years that I'm just, my standards are here, not here. So you all are paying good money for our services and entitled to every ounce of that value. I'm just going to do a quick shameless plug. I don't know if Jackie's still on the on live.
Still in here or what?
I don't know. She's probably off having dinner. But we have, if you guys want a few laughs, we have a podcast. We have a fun podcast called the Reddit Real Estate Disasters Show on the tubes or on all the major podcast
awesome
channels. So it's a little fun project. So hey, thanks for everybody for tuning in. And listen, if you guys want to have your question featured, it may be it's going to be probably a monster for the next 2 weeks, and then it'll be something different. I let my daughter picked out the monsters, all these little animations, and she's like, "Mom," I'm like, "You sure? It's Halloween. Come on."
I like that. It's a good idea.
It's kind of cool. So you guys call in, and then I'd love to hear from you. I'd love having the community voice, get in on the action, hear from you guys and whatnot, because you guys are, without my savvy home seller community, I have no community.
Oh,
so there you go. I very much appreciate everybody. So, hey everybody. Nicole says that looked just like me. Thanks so much, Nicole, for phoning in the question. Hey, everybody have a great week. Be kind, be good to each other, stay safe out there. Angie, thanks for joining us, and see y'all next Tuesday.
Bye, y'all.
I love this music.
Let's relax.
Mm-hmm.